You introducing this time? It seems like the habit that we're building here.
Here, we'll just start again. Do you want to do it?
I don't care.
Want to or want me?
I don't care. Go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Derek, and welcome to Both Sides of the Fence, episode 5. Wow, I can't believe it. Episode 5 already.
I know.
Jen, right?
Two in a row. We did one last night, too.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And we have a special guest here. Jen, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So this gentleman that's joining us is Tim Motte. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about Tim. Tim, I met you last year, right?
Yes.
At a clay shoot. Again, Jen and the guns,
Okay.
you know, any opportunity. And the clay shoot was to benefit a charity, which you're going to tell us about a little bit later. That you are on the board of. You started.
I am.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And when we started this podcast, he was one of the first people that I actually thought of in regards to who he is, what his background is, but also the human being that he is in regards to what we're trying to really accomplish here and illustrate that sometimes what you would assume about somebody isn't necessarily the case, I think. Absolutely. Is what we're trying
Which
to
we've
achieve.
Proven in just about every episode so far, so stay tuned.
Absolutely.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So Tim, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, sure. My name's Tim Motte. I'm going to be 61 years old. I served 25 years in the Pennsylvania State Police. I mostly involved in narcotics and firearms trafficking, violent crime. I did patrol for maybe a third of my career. During that, I was also a member of the Pennsylvania Army and Air National Guard for 25 years.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I was a first responder to Flight 93 on September 11th, 2001. I spent a week there at the crash site. And then about a month after that, I spent a total of almost 3 years on active duty, deployed to 43 countries all over the world, a couple tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and a bunch of different places, like I said, all over the world. Good places, bad places, great cultures. Got to, experience a lot of things I would have never got to experience had I not been in the military.
So not everything's heartbreaking.
Yeah, no,
right,
not at all. Not at all.
Which is good to know that you guys get to see all that amazing stuff.
Some beautiful things in this world.
Yeah.
Beautiful people. And
met a lot of people I'm sure that you still stay in touch with,
met
right?
a lot of people. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Met a lot of people. And right now I have started a nonprofit about 3 years ago for veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD.
I love that.
And I'm currently the chief of police of a small town in Washington County.
Yeah, which is my home county, you know.
And being part of a small town here, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a lot of work. People don't realize the ins and outs of it all. So yeah, thank you just for all the service. I mean, in general.
Thank you.
And there's like multiple services to be thankful for. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think without further ado, we're going to just start with some questions that we have for you to kind of prompt the conversation, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And one of the hot topics, we actually talked about this a little bit in the episode last night as well in regards to our personal views on immigration and border security, because it's obviously very much in the media these days. But from a law enforcement and national security perspective, where do you, Tim, feel the line between enforcing immigration laws and maintaining trust with local communities lies?
Well, it's not, I don't think, as black and white as it seems. Obviously, we have to have border security because there are people that want to come into our country and do us harm and exploit us. And that's something that we don't want. So we have to have border security to try to keep people out, like terrorists and criminals and the cartels and stuff like that. I think that like people that come in with bad intent, with criminal records, like bad criminal records, they need to be deported. However, there's a human aspect of this as well, where people just come here to work. They're looking for a better life, and that's kind of what we were founded on. So there's a lot of smart people in this country, and there has to be a way where you can balance this all out. Like, I don't think just somebody up here for working should be snatched off the street and deported, but the people that are here that, are gang members or part of the cartel, they need, the hammer.
Yeah, we discussed this last night. I
Yeah.
mean, I was raised, and I still firmly believe that laws are laws. I mean, period. That's pretty much
Right.
how it is with me. And illegal immigration is against the law. So individuals are breaking the law, but we both agreed that the system itself is inherently broken, and the
Mhm.
wait times to actually come here
Sure.
legally, it's really horrible for individuals right now. And I think
Right.
that's really the crux of the matter, is that system needs fixed so that the individuals that don't have those records do have the means to enter the country in a legal fashion.
Right.
Do you happen to know anybody that has worked down in that area at all, just out of curiosity? I'd love to talk to somebody that has
Yeah.
had that experience.
I don't know. I don't, but I do know a special agent that I worked with when I was on a task force who retired and then became a member of ICE, and
Okay.
he works in the Pittsburgh office.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy their position either right now. I
know,
mean, it's,
Going off of last night and after we did that episode, and I sat and I was thinking, I was going over the questions that you had sent to me prior. And one thing that kept hitting me is that I feel like sometimes we forgot how to put ourselves in other people's shoes for a
Mhm.
moment, because that's where the empathy for me, I feel, starts immediately, right? And in those moments, I think a lot of times when you shut that off, like you said, that gray area of what's true, what's not true, what's really happening out there, you know what I mean? Kids being snatched up, how many? Is it more than we think? Is it not as much as they're telling you? But in the end, would those errors happen if we could just remember what empathy and understanding looks like? Because not all of them are criminals or bad people. In fact, we have people that are born Americans that are way worse than some of these people that are
Absolutely.
getting picked up. So I think in that matter, we sometimes forget, right, that this is a human standing in front of me. This is a family that, whether I do my job or not, that I'm going to have to rip apart. And so even when you're doing the action, do you feel in law enforcement that it does help de-escalate scenarios when that officer is showing at least a monicum of, my pain is here for you. This is my job, so I'm going to make it the easiest I can possibly make this for you.
Yes, yes, but unfortunately, sometimes scenarios are created, or the atmosphere is that you don't have time to be empathetic, because there's a danger, of whatever, and that's like, if everybody would just take a step back,
Yeah.
that you had time to be empathetic, definitely to defuse things.
and I think playing devil's advocate too, if you look at it from the ICE agent's perspective, the majority of these individuals are doing a good job. And
And I
they're
said
now
that yesterday.
facing,
I mean, I said that
and
on-
they're
yes,
now facing
absolutely.
absolute hatred from from a lot of people in communities. I mean, walking in to buy lunch and being turned away and not being served simply because they're trying to do their job.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to try and step in everybody in the situation's shoes and try and look at it from all perspectives. I mean, I can't imagine what that must feel like for those officers either.
Do you feel that them in certain instances that we've seen, and you specifically seeing it on the law enforcement side, a couple of what some people would not consider murder, some people are considering some of these cases murders. In those scenarios, though, do you feel that if they would have found certain individuals to be guilty, that it would have put a better respect for the community on the rest of the ICE agents that maybe would have done it better or walked a better path, and something like that? Do you think it would have benefited them more? Do you think it would have been the same situation?
Are you talking about the agents specifically, who, like, shot people?
Yes, well, I would like to be a little bit more. I didn't want to come on here and be very direct on a
Yeah.
specific shooting, right? We
Okay.
know that there are certain topics out
Sure,
there,
sure.
but the reality is those are just two. We know that there are many, so I don't want to take away from other scenarios or people's
Sure.
that have gone through trauma in that. Do you feel that, though, in cases where by a law standard that they broke laws, do you think that if there would have been more harsh action to them, it would have actually protected the majority of the ICE agents?
Yeah, to some degree,
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, I can see that. And we're jumping forward to
Sorry,
a
I
number
know
nine.
we
No, not at
I
all.
just didn't want to
Because
forget about
that
that
leads
question
in.
because
Absolutely. I mean,
I
it
think it's
kind of,
important for somebody like him to explain that
yeah,
because of people out there can then feel empathy for people in the situation on your side. as well.
100%.
Sure.
And it kind of jumps to, we were going to discuss more specifically, in regards to the police force later on in the
Mhm.
conversation, but it makes sense to kind of bring it up at this stage because it's along the same lines.
Yeah.
I mean, we were planning on asking, what does appropriate accountability look like when officers make mistakes, and where do you think the public gets it wrong? And Tim, I'm going to let you answer, but I really looked into this question because it led me to have questions of my own
Yeah.
on some number statistics of what that looked like. But do you want to answer first?
Yeah. I mean, when something like this happens, obviously it's very emotionally charged, and for people to rush to judgment on either side, it doesn't give any time to investigate it at all. Like, we see things now sometimes as they're happening, and right away people are making judgment calls, that this person did this wrong, or that person did that wrong. But in reality, when it's happening to you, things can happen so fast.
Mhm.
It's the Supreme Court recognizes it's your perception,
Yes.
right? Your perception might not be right, but it's your perception at the time based on your training and experience. Now, it might end up you made a mistake, you were wrong. And there are remedies for that. That's why we have civil courts, or, if it's proven that it's criminal, that's different. If it's criminal, if there's criminal intent, then yes, people need to be held accountable. But I think what happens now is we just automatically rush to judgment, and you think that the video is the do all be all, and it isn't.
It is.
And that key, what you said right there, is a massive part. The video. We're talking about something, when I looked into it, that
Mhm.
actually hasn't changed very much number wise in the last 20 years, believe it or not. It's the social media and the videos that's changed all of this.
Yeah.
So when I was looking into it, just last year alone, the police force in the United States received 240 million calls. 240 million calls to law enforcement last year. 68.5 million people in the United States had direct contact with the police force last year. And out of those individuals, there are 1,200 deaths that were caused by police officers
Yeah.
during that, for whatever reason. I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent, but we're looking at huge numbers of callouts, huge numbers of interactions. And although it is incredibly sad, and I don't want to belittle what's happened to anybody, it's still a really small percentage. We're just seeing it more because social media is there, and people are
Absolutely.
so jumping into, filming these things and getting them out there. They're not filming the other 240 million instances where police officers have actioned something good.
Absolutely.
If that
And
makes
you know how I
any
feel about
sense.
social media. I feel that just about, especially in your industry, your job title, there has been such a stain on law enforcement and police for a very long time.
Recently.
We have friends that have left law enforcement because wives are literally threatening to file for divorce because of the severity of what's happening on the streets now. So I completely agree with you on that. But social media, and you go back to that, um, I think that's also when you talk about regulation and laws and what we were just specifically discussing. Do you feel though that to help you guys form a better plan as law enforcement, do you think that we are failing at creating more black and white rights for the people that you're protecting and holding accountable? Or do you think that the law enforcement needs more black and white rules and guidelines and added rules and guidelines to make it easier for you guys to do your job?
Doing the job is really not that hard. Um, Again, when you're using common sense and empathy and things like that, and obviously we need lots of regulations, and there are tons and tons of regulations out there. Um, I just think that, like, we all need to tone it down a bit.
Yeah.
I know, like, and we were probably going to talk about this later, but the police officers out there today, they are saturated in trauma, right? You see the worst of the worst, the
I
absolute
can't imagine.
most horrendous thing that you can imagine. You see it, you smell it, you feel it, and then the next day you go to work and you do it all over again. So oftentimes police officers become jaded,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of help for police. And you certainly don't want to admit that you have a problem, because then you're
Then
going
you're
to be labeled,
retaliated against for the
or you're
problem
going to
that
lose
you
your job.
yeah,
Yeah. And,
absolutely.
you know, police, there's a mental health crisis in first responder community, you know, that I think if it was addressed seriously, you know, it's going to cut down on a lot of use of force type stuff, um, because they're coming into an incident and they're in code yellow already, you know,
Yeah.
walking up on a car, you know, you don't know if somebody's going to pull a gun on you. And, you know, sometimes, especially like in an urban environment, you know, the officers are up here when they're walking up on the car. Meanwhile, they don't even know. It could just be, you know, somebody's grandma,
Mhm.
right? So,
Yeah, I mean, I was always raised. I meant to say this early on in the conversation. I was literally raised, and I still believe that the police are my friends. They're there to help me. You know what I mean? That's what I was taught as a little girl. And I still categorically believe that, generally speaking, across the board. But because of things that have happened, and because I conceal carry in my vehicle, I get a little anxious on the two times I've been pulled over as the officer is coming up to my own vehicle, and I haven't done it. Guys, I've never been in trouble with the police. But
Yeah.
the first thing that I say is, officer, just to let you know, I have a firearm in the middle console. I have another firearm in my glove compartment. But that anxiety is because of what social media has fed me. It's not an
Absolutely.
inherent anxiety because
Yeah.
I don't truly feel like that. I'm more concerned of making sure that the officer feels safe so that that in turn keeps me safe, if that makes any sense. What a
Absolutely.
weird situation
how'd
to
that
be
work
in.
out for you when you did that?
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
the officers?
absolutely. Yes. Thank you for telling me, you know, and then, you know, again, saying that I had to go into my center console to get my insurance information. And then after I tell you, I moved it after that because to have told him I have a firearm in there, and without thinking, I was keeping all of my stuff in there
Yeah.
too. He's not wanting me to reach in there after I said that to
Absolutely.
him. So now I keep it somewhere else separate so that I'm not in that scenario either for the officer or for myself.
Yeah.
But it's just a crazy kind of scenario that's definitely changed from when I was a little girl, you know?
Oh yeah, and for me though, it was a little bit of the flip side. I grew up learning to respect. I was raised in a family that anybody in uniform you respected. So it's just kind of broad. You just knew. But then because of my personal lived experience, I had some horrific experiences with police officers in my past, which was more degrading. A prime quick example that you can probably have a heart to is I was leaving. I used to do female impersonation, and I lived in Erie, and I was driving up to meet a friend at Sonic up on Peach Street, and a police officer pulled me over. I didn't know why at the time. He said it was because the taillight was out. That officer then proceeded to have me strip outside of my car on a main drag down to my underwear because he wanted me to prove to him that I was a male, not a female. And I had told him several times, sir, I am a male. This is me on my ID. I'll scrub my face off for you, but I'm just meeting a friend and going home. I do female impersonation. And finally, a female officer, ironically, pulled up behind, as a lot of times commonly, just to also not just protect me, but also the other officer, which I completely understood. And she got out of the car and immediately brought me a blanket because it was December.
Wow.
It was 30 degrees outside. I was literally in whitey tighties. And I'd never seen another officer scold another officer. And she said some very harsh choice words, and told him that he had two options, which was either to go sit in his car or she was going to call. I forget who she said. And she started crying with me, and I lost it. I broke down. I mean, I forgot where I was. In that experience. So after that, even though she came in to help me, the trauma part was way more severe than what happened in that experience. And then it took me many years to have the opposite effect because then I was in a dark place in my life. I got into some trouble in my younger years. But then I had good people, good police officers, district attorneys, public defenders that became friends in my life that I was like, wow, okay. I was one of those ones that just
Got a
happened to
bad
get one really
egg,
bad
'cause they're
egg that
yeah.
it wasn't even, and this is why I wanted to say this, because a lot of times it's not the uniform that's doing that. That was just the human that attacked me that day.
Yeah.
That was a person that didn't like me for me.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with the police department. Unfortunately, uniform just it's second skin to them, so it's labeled that way.
Right.
But I now have an incredible respect for law enforcement, and admiration and support for them, because I'm just glad that I got to have a different taste of that
I'm
experience. when
sorry
I
you
got
had that
older.
experience.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
so
that's
sorry that
something.
happened.
Yeah.
But I'd like to bring that up because then social media, if that would have happened now to me and social
Oh,
media would have
gosh.
grabbed that would have become world news
Yeah.
Right.
over one incident, when again, it makes it so easy for us to make people believe that it's so easy to hate people that do the job that you do
Right.
when you have situations like that. So yeah, I just want to say that also people who've had bad experiences try to have another good experience, and that go up, introduce yourself to the chief of police or your police, walk up to a police car. I do all the time in town.
Here in
Most
Carnegie?
people and you see people are like, why is he walking up there? What's happening? When really it's just to say,
Right.
hey. And then sometimes the police actually awkwardly say hello, not because they don't want to talk, I think because that doesn't exist for them anymore.
No.
Right.
And so that's heartbreaking on that part. So I
Yeah.
hope that that's something that we can turn around
Yeah.
for you guys to show that they're doing their job. You broke a law. If we can meet in the middle, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What happened to you was not a mistake either. That was a crime.
Yeah.
Like that violates just about everything.
Yeah.
So that it's unexcusable. There's no sugarcoating that. There's nothing. It's wrong.
It
And I
shouldn't have
appreciate that from
happened.
somebody that's been
Yeah.
through so much. But I'll tell you, God sent an angel when he sent that woman, because the reality is that man had so much hate in his eyes in that moment. I'm telling you, I feared much deeper than what people thought in that moment. I didn't know what was going to
Sure.
happen to me in that moment, because I didn't see him as an officer anymore. I saw him as this evil person.
Right.
It wasn't even about law enforcement. And when she showed up, it was like a powerful, badass mother that just pulled up and was like, no, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to do it this way.
Right.
Yeah.
Period. So again, it was, I'll never forget her. In fact, I'll never forget her name. I won't say it, but I'll never forget who the officer was in that moment either.
I love that
So,
part of the story,
yes.
at least.
And I do, because there's always, and I like to say that because as dark and deep as it was, there was a light there. even
Yeah.
though I couldn't see it in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And you'd mentioned mental health on the police officer
Absolutely.
side of things, on the officer side of things, which I do want to talk about that a little bit more. And we've talked, I think it's come up in every episode that we've done so far, that we're in a literal mental health crisis in this country across the board. I'm sure you guys are encountering it on a day-to-day basis much more than you ever did before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they provide further training these days for dealing with mental health scenarios? And there's been talks about creating not a different section of the police force, but like another task force that would deal with like mental health responders in those scenarios. What are your kind of feelings and thoughts on all of that?
Well, it's a lot different now than it was when I started. There was really no help. Now there's help. Most counties have mental health, like crisis people that will respond. We had an incident last year where we had a mental health crisis with a person, and the counselors responded, and the person actually, shot at the officers and the
gosh.
mental health workers. So, again, things happen fast, but there is, we have people that are in the criminal justice system that shouldn't be there because they have mental health issues and they need to be in a mental hospital and not in jail. So we almost have to get them charged and get them into court. And most of the counties have mental health courts, but it's hard to keep somebody to take their medication or stay on
Yeah.
like therapy if they don't want to, and it's very hard to enforce that,
Yeah.
and they're back out and they're doing the same thing, and then you know
Do you believe with the officers being, I mean, other than obviously 911 calls, they're there virtually, right, in their ears when instances happening. But do you feel being technically first on site, do you think that police should have more discussion and say in hearings than what you see them have now?
As far as the mental
As far
health
as
is
guidance, as
concerned?
far as you
sure.
going,
Oh yeah.
do you
Yeah.
think you should be able to have more pull and say so to the judge of saying, listen, this is what our opinion based on our office feels, that this individual, although the crime may look severe, we believe them to be a beautiful human, or however you would portray that to be. They just are lost and need some deep
Right.
help.
And to be honest, even the judges' hands are tied. The laws need to change. They need to change before any of that stuff can even be started, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, every president that comes in says they're going to do something, or, governor or whoever, and it's not getting done.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear you say that too on your side, because it's important that you guys are asking for more, to do more, right? And that's important to hear too.
100%.
Sure.
I mean, the majority of reform that's happened recently has been on the police side of things. There's definitely been a lot of police reform because of instances that have happened in our recent past, which were heavily covered on social media, and there's multitudes of opinions on those types of things. But when I looked into that as well, since those major reforms have come in over the last 5 years, the instances of police-caused deaths, which, like I said, are about 1,000 a year compared to the 250 million calls that they take, have not gone up or down. So I kind of wonder if they're still doing their job well the same way, and the reform obviously hasn't changed those numbers at all. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
I do.
So nothing's changed. So the police, were they doing the right thing initially? And does that hinder you doing your job? Because the reform has been substantial from what I understand in recent years, right?
Some of it does hinder your job. And I can tell you a lot of officers, out there are hesitant to be proactive because you're worried if you do the right thing, you're going to go to jail. You can still go to jail. So is it worth losing your job, your way of life, and then you end up going to prison for, having to shoot somebody, or, all of a sudden it's turned into this giant racial incident when there's no component to that at all, So people are hesitant. I've talked to young officers about this. They're also extremely hesitant to use force, and sometimes they end up getting hurt because they're afraid to do what they're trained to do. And I'm not saying everyone, use of force is horrible. For the police officer, if you have to use force, it's not like it's a feel-good thing. I've used force on people and gone home and cried my eyes out at night because I don't want to hurt somebody.
Absolutely.
But sometimes you're not there to hurt them. You're there to stop what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that requires using force.
And again, because most time people's stories, they won't surprise you when they tell you what created the action. You know what I mean?
Right.
I remember the first time I got in trouble, the officer in the car said to me, "You want to talk?" And I was like, I didn't answer for a couple of minutes because I was like, what is this? Because again, in your mind, you're wondering, and here it was just, he wanted to know my story. And it was the first time I ever got in trouble. And I remember him telling the judge, he said, "I had a wonderful conversation with this gentleman, and I think he needs a pass." And so seeing it in that way, in that aspect, being open and being able to be comfortable enough to trust that individual, he ended up showing up for me in the end of the line and that way. So again, but that's where I feel that we're missing, right?
Yeah.
You have to have trust. I mean, it's in anything, relationship, family, workplace. So it should be no different that the civilians that you're supposed to protect, if they don't trust you, how can you do the job?
Sure.
And then how do we bring that back?
Right.
And I don't necessarily feel it's, for me, with the experiences I've had and friends that we've had that also work in those type of jobs, I just think that it's a higher up that is failing your industry specifically. When things go wrong, it's easy to blame it on that department, but it's the very department that they're lacking giving you the needs and the skills. I mean, even because when you cut budgets and you do all those programs, then it takes away from you. It takes the hours you can provide to the officers. It takes the insurance amounts that they're being given, to where a lot of times their therapy isn't even covered under that.
Right.
So they can't get help even when they want to. We are failing our service members. And I think that that's important to say for people to hear, because we have to wake up and realize the only way to make it better is to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I was researching that, because I didn't actually know, right? Like, who decides who's on our police force and who decides about that budget? Is that where does it stop? Where does it start and stop? Like, what does the federal government do in regards to the police? What does the state government do? I didn't know. And I was I'm embarrassed to admit that. A lot of that budget and stuff is actually controlled locally. It's your actual local government that decides on that budget. The state's more responsible for actual laws and like police training requirements for their state and things like that. Federal government has actually relatively little say on your local police force. So I think with that being said, I'm extremely happy with my police force in Washington County. I'm good friends with our sheriff, like we discussed before. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I looked at our statistics. Everything's consistently dropping in my county, which I'm proud to say. But if you do have a problem with your local police force, it's those local elections that you really need to concentrate on, because that's where the changes actually
voting
occur.
matters, everybody.
Yeah,
It does.
That's how you make
100%.
true change.
Either
Absolutely.
way, whatever way, if you are unhappy, it's those local elections you need to be concerned about.
And again, it's a job, right?
Yes.
We go to an interview, that is you voting. If you don't feel that that person is good in the position of your business anymore, and America is our business, then you vote them out, you fire them, and you give somebody else that position. So again, I think that's where we make big change, and that's ways to show that you love and support what's doing right. That's how you tell them, we love you, we thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I constantly talk about guns. I'm letting you take
I know.
number 3.
Okay, that's what I
All
said.
right.
Okay, so we're gonna switch a little bit, Tim, to gun control. As someone who served in the military and law enforcement, what does responsible gun ownership look like to you, and where, if anywhere, should limits exist in that category?
And now, before you start, I'm even more interested in your answer, because I didn't realize you spent so long specifically in gun-related crime.
Yes.
Yeah, I spent 10 years on a firearms trafficking task force all over the Pittsburgh area. And so I got to see a lot of things that most officers don't get to see as far as gun laws go. And obviously, everyone cannot have a gun. I'm a pro Second Amendment guy. I own lots of guns. I enjoy shooting, but there are limits, and there are loopholes that in the laws, and there are common sense things I think we can do to accomplish both, regulating some of this stuff, but protecting people's rights.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. You always hear a lot about firearm registry, right? I don't want my guns. I don't want the federal government knowing how many guns I have or whatever. Well, in Pennsylvania, we have what's called a record of sale. And what that is anytime you buy a handgun from an FFL, Federal Firearms Licensee, that handgun is put into a record of sale database. That information in and of itself cannot be used to prosecute anybody. It's just a tool. Just like if your car is in a database and I know that your car, it gives me a tool to go talk to somebody. I cannot tell you how many people had guns stolen from their homes or their vehicles. We were able to get their serial numbers because we had a record sale database. Or a crime gun, like, and this is firearms trafficking, where you have a gun, it's in your house, somebody burglarizes your house, then they take that gun and they trade it for drugs, and then that gun ends up at a scene of a homicide in downtown Pittsburgh. How does it go from one end to the other?
That's where that investigation begins. A long journey.
Absolutely. And knowing who had that gun, who owned it or bought or sold it, is a very good piece of the puzzle. So we have that in Pennsylvania, and I think if you would expand that, it's a really good tool for law enforcement. And how you would protect people's rights, like in Pennsylvania, we have very strict wiretap laws, right? And if me as a certified officer, if I conduct a wiretap and I do it wrong and I do it illegally, I am individually held accountable in that I can be charged with a crime, that the government's not going to protect me, and I can be held civilly liable. So that's what protects people from illegal wiretaps. And you can do the same thing with guns. If you use the information illegally, then the officer could be prosecuted for it. And that's an out of the box idea. It's probably a little complex, but it's something that would work.
I have a question just for gun control. I'm going to go kind of what we talked about the other night, and your perspective with gun laws right now, and then talking about the amendments, and because I'm a huge believer in them. I think that's what really keeps balance. Do you feel, because you've been in military, so you've seen the worst of the worst with the strongest guns? I don't have specific names. I'm not really a big gun everybody, but I do support the guns. Okay, I'm saying that now one day. But when we move a little bit to mass shootings, and I'm sure that if you haven't been in it, you've seen somebody that has experienced it, and then mixed with military. Do you think that the law that people shouldn't lose their rights to having guns, but the type of guns mixed with, obviously, mental health is a huge part of that, and I completely understand that. Do you think that we're doing it right when it comes to that, as a law enforcement and military
You're
perspective?
talking about like limiting calibers, sizes,
or
those
if
types
that's
of
not
things.
the problem on a law enforcement perspective, as far as like you always say, the gun's not the killer, it's the person holding it. But if we match them together to create the worst of the worst, right? The human and the gun.
Right.
Do you feel that there are ways that we can change that we're not doing it now?
Again, a lot of these shootings, when you really research on, especially the school shootings. At one point, I was a school resource officer, so I would.
Oh wow! Okay.
I trained the teachers and the staff to do it, so I would really do a deep dive into these school shootings, and almost in every single case, they're putting out. The suspects are putting stuff on social media. They're telling people, and people just don't do anything.
They're not listening.
But also, there's been times where people do report it, and then the police don't do anything. So I don't know. I think maybe people need to be held accountable in some way. Like if you know that this is going to happen and you don't do anything about it, that there's some type of punishment for that.
Which we do know that some states are starting to.
Yeah,
I know one of the most recent, the father, and then the mother following.
I think it was Michigan.
Both of them ended up. And were put into the capital crime case. So, you are seeing it. Do you think that if that could become in every state law, that would definitely help?
I think it probably could, but it would take so much longer because you have the individual people in each state, that do stuff like that. So it's almost, I think, to make it happen quicker, it would probably have to come at a national level.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have my views on limits to caliber and size, but what are your feelings on that? Do you think that's something I'm very against it. I don't think that should be, that's part of the right and shouldn't be taken away from individuals. But what are your feelings on that?
I don't think there should be limits on caliber and sizes and magazines and things like that. Especially like when you start talking about automatic weapons and suppressors or silencers, that stuff is all expensive, and there are ways to regulate that stuff. You just can't walk into a store and buy certain things. Could we tighten up some of the regulations? Yeah, we probably could, more background screening. Like in Pennsylvania right now, if you had a long gun, you had an AK-47 and you wanted to go down to the flea market and sell it out of the trunk of your car, you could do that. And it's perfectly legal. And that's
That
something.
is kind of crazy.
That's
Yeah,
great.
That's a loophole.
Okay, me just like,
Yeah.
well, wait a second,
That's
right?
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm used to seeing purses coming out of trunks, but
Yeah.
not
Right.
and shoes and bags, right?
Right,
but
right.
not, guns. But the reality is that exists and that
It's legal.
happens. Yeah.
Can't do anything
And
about
to
it.
put legal in front of it.
Right.
Again, where I feel like we are so backwards sometimes. Some of these laws need to be rewritten completely.
Sure.
you
Sure.
know? And again, it's because I grew up in a blue collar family. My father was, I almost say he was the best of the best, but redneck, true and true. And they were all about hunting, guns, and racing. I mean, all that they just loved all that. So I've been raised around it. So to me, it's always been normal, but I've never seen it used in a violent way. So I tend to have where I'm in the middle of it is because I see the stories and I try to putting myself in their shoes.
Right.
It makes me feel more middle to it. But again, I also agree with Jen and you as well that mental health is definitely a premise in that. And we failed that several years ago when we abolished a lot of that. Instead of fixing the foundation of the mental health, we just abolished it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to take the time to fix what was wrong and how people were being
that
abused.
money was reallocated to other places.
And again, that's a whole nother podcast,
It
right?
is.
That money really right now
100%.
turns this country around.
And we did talk about it briefly last night, but I actually did live in a country where guns were illegal for a period of time. I was in Scotland for 14 years, and I mentioned this last night. And they all initially called me crazy American Jen because I came from this country where guns were legal. I have never seen such violent person-on-person crime as what I experienced there. I mean, you see in movies the Chelsea Grin where they literally slash their faces open. This stuff happens over there. And you also, like I mentioned on the last episode, have a criminal element who still has guns because they still get them, and a police force who has nothing. They have a billy club and mace.
I know you said that last
It's crazy
night.
being an officer here.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a police officer in a
either.
country like that because they do still have the guns.
Right.
And so that's the reality that we're looking at. And then one last thing on this that I want to ask your opinion on, because I put on a course. Remember I mentioned last episode about there's a lot of women who have concealed carry that literally have never shot their handgun themselves, which is terrifying to me. I mean, that's terrifying. I actually asked an officer from Greene County to come to a private property, and he did classes with a small group of women, 10 women, so that they could gain familiarity with their firearm. And it went down extremely well. And it kind of gave me the idea, which I think we should probably consider it again along the lines you used to when I was younger, take a 3-day course to get your hunting license.
Yes.
Why do we not look at mandatorily making people take a competency class of 3 days before they can get
to ride a motorcycle.
Exactly, anything.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's
How do you feel about that?
It's a common sense thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In Pennsylvania, I have no experience with a handgun. Go into a store, buy it, go to the sheriff's office, get a concealed carry permit, and now I'm carrying a gun, and I've never shot it before. And it's legal. You know,
that is crazy
it's
to me, and I
foolish.
think that needs.
I'd
fixed.
also feel and to be honest, even for me, I would feel more comfortable if they had that to go buy one or two. We've talked about my husband getting one. In light of what's going on in the world right now, it has been a discussion here and there because of what and who he is and what he looks like. Because it's not just police, we're seeing civilians are attacking people now of that, and we're seeing hate crimes happen again, a flare up in that. But I would feel much safer if my husband wasn't taught by just a person who owns a gun range, but somebody that had to make commitments and promises and truths and be certified in that. And so I would feel safer having a gun at that point because of, but making it more easy, or saying you can't even go in the store, like how hairdressers, like we have stores that you can't go in unless you're licensed. You can't buy a gun until you get that certificate.
And I think as a
and then you take that into the gun place, and then that already I feel would just bring my blood down a little bit, because I feel that every person who walks in there is now certified. They know what they're using.
You can enact these laws and put safeguards in. And the wiretap law is a perfect example of it. And you eliminate the argument, because you're saying that if you use this in a wrong way, you're going to be held liable for it.
Absolutely.
You know, but a lot of the politicians, they don't want to talk about this because you have the radicals on both sides that right away they're taking away our guns, or you know what I mean. We need to take away everybody's guns, and I think that's where the conversation stops.
Yeah, that's part of the
But
problem.
I think
That's
a
why.
lot of times it's being used, as a lot of things are right now with
Politically.
our government. It's being used politically when the truth is the entire conversation has nothing to do with their American people.
Right.
Right? How is it going to benefit or help them? It's how do we stay in, or how are we going to make money doing this?
Absolutely.
And that's, again, almost every topic we talk about. And almost every episode, me and Jen have agreed that it all comes back to the fact that our government has continuously, on both sides, all sides, just disappointed us, and are showing more and more that they do not care and they're not there for us.
Right.
Their meaning to be on that hill has nothing to do with wanting to benefit people that are sitting at this table and the people that we love.
Yeah.
And that's the saddest part of it all.
Because
we want, right? Most of us live in the middle. We want the change.
Right.
We want to love one another, you know?
Tim, we haven't even touched on your time in the military.
I know.
Really.
I was just going to thank you because I really wanted to get to that. I think that's a big deal.
I do too. And it leads directly into you being able to tell us a little bit more about the charity, both from a first responder and a veteran point of view. But how did your time in the Army, because I've seen it from both sides. I know a lot of people that have been in the military, and some are uber still pro-American, and other have become kind of jaded with the country because of their experiences. I've seen both sides. But how did your time in the Army, how has it shaped your view of American freedoms? And do you think civilians take those freedoms for granted these days?
Well, how does it shape my view of American freedom? I mean, we do have one of the greatest countries in the world.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is go to like a third world country and see like the level of corruption and how people are treated and how they live. And, you know, most of the world does not live like
They do not.
we live,
No.
right? But like at one, you know, when I was like younger in the military, I wanted to go to, you know, I wanted to do my part and, you know, be deployed and all that, like a lot of veterans do. And then when you get there and it's not like what you thought it was, you know, it can be disillusioning. Like, you know, why did we do this?
Yeah.
You know, why are we here? You know, why did so-and-so get killed for, you know, just the most stupid reason? And then you're like, this isn't about, you know, what I thought it was.
Which is fighting for your country.
Or
and your
what
people,
did my
right?
brother's death
benefit?
What
Right.
benefit of
Right.
losing my friend and
Right.
my fellow soldier? What was the benefit out
Right.
of that? I'm sure the questions.
Sure.
As well.
You know, whenever like we pulled out of Afghanistan the way we did, it like a lot of people that really affected them. You know, like I can tell you, for 2 days I cried. You know, and it was just like, why? Everything was such a waste. You know, I mean, it seemed like a righteous thing to do. I think it was a righteous thing to do, but you had touched on like the leadership and, you know, and the politics and all that stuff, like not to mention all the civilians that were killed, you know, like what about them? You know, like, I don't know, but I mean, I still think we have, you know, one of the greatest countries. There's nothing perfect in this world.
No.
But we can definitely improve on some things, I think.
Do you believe that our government is taking care of your fellow brothers and sisters the way that they should?
Well, I can tell you that in Pittsburgh area, we have a phenomenal VA healthcare system.
We do.
We have great, but it's not like that everywhere.
No.
You know, there are people sometimes that drive for hours to get to where they need to go. The mental health side of it, you know, I think needs some work, but you know, I can't say anything bad about the VA healthcare system in my experience, you know, in Pittsburgh anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
that's
grew up in
good to
Butler,
hear.
and Butler, as you know, had one of the
Sure.
highest ranking
Right.
VAs in the area, and then they remodeled. They closed down the old one. I used to love it because I always thought it was a famous person lived there when I was a kid, and we drove by because the way the buildings were done, it looked like a palace for veterans. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And then every 2 years they would bring the wall in and build this. They put the beautiful wall of all the soldiers that have died, in the last 90 years, and they'd put it up, and I would stand there for hours with my grandmother because my mom's dad was in the Air Force, so he was on the plaque. So every 2 years, I got to go and see my great grandfather on the plaque, which I thought was really cool
Yeah.
to know that, right? And then I would turn around and see these buildings, and then you saw all these people in uniform that would walk in, even the nurses, and a lot of times they would be in uniform. So it was an incredible feeling to be around that type of atmosphere. But do you feel overall as a nation that we're doing right by our veterans?
I think we are. I think a lot of people out there. Again, getting back to the mental health aspect of it, I think we're not doing a bad job, but we can do better.
Good.
We can do better.
There's always room for
Oh,
improvement.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, again, because coming from you, it means the most because you see all of, again, social media and all these contents and even news. There's so many news stations that aren't even really affiliated with certain network programs that are spreading all of this stuff. So I wanted to hear that from you because I wanted to know. Nobody knows better than somebody that's been there personally. To know, are your brothers and sisters really struggling out there, dealing with PTSD, and there's nobody there to help them.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you feel that we're doing better than I honestly thought we were.
You are.
Yeah.
That is. It sounds better
Like
to me too.
I've been like with mental health treatment and physical stuff, and I can say that I've never had any better health care than the VA where I go. The VA
That's
office.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I think before we move on, because I really want to spend some time on talking about your charity,
Yes.
I would like to hear your views about the war that we're currently in. What are your feelings on that? Which wasn't a question we had written down, but I am super curious
She
if you
grabbed
don't
it from me
mind.
too quick.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
That's
okay.
okay.
It's a good question.
It is. It's a very complex thing, and it's been something that when you really look at it, it's been going on for 40 plus years. When you say death to the United States and Israel for 40 years, and I saw firsthand what the roadside bombs did, and things that happened there. There's definitely a need to put a stop to things, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as we're being told.
Yeah, I would definitely agree
completely
with
agree
that.
with you.
Yes.
I think we're closer to the beginning than we are the end.
Yeah, I would agree with
And
that.
again,
too.
I do want to say, and I think just by talking to you and just learning you already, you have so much empathy and things that you've seen. And I do want people to remember that there are still children and moms and kids and people that have nothing to do, that aren't even old enough to be in the regime or being taught to be into that yet. And that I think, again, we've always been great because we've always been a country that we didn't start the war, but we'd finish it, right? That's why we were known to be so incredible because, the U.S. is now involved. Shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But for this war, it's the first time in my lifetime that I feel like we're aggressing differently. We're being aggressors in a way that I don't like, the way that
I don't know.
being seen, being shown. And I think that's coming because the current administration is not being transparent for us to understand.
As far as time scale of length,
and
I would
why
agree with
and
that.
how
Yes.
and the truth behind it.
Yeah.
That for me is what I need, because then when I don't hear that, what do? We create our own narrative in our minds.
Yeah.
And we create our own thought of what we think it now is because we're not given the right information.
Yeah.
So we have to create something for us to believe,
Sure.
to make us just be able to walk through life every day, not being in fear of what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Information and truth is everything, because there's so much disinformation out there, and if you're going to rely just on that, you're not getting the truth. And if you can't trust the government to give us the truth, then everyone's just going to come up with their own narrative.
Absolutely.
I don't even understand why it's being done, because you're literally building up failure for your own future.
Right.
When this doesn't end in a month or whatever is lately being promised, which it just keeps changing very slightly, you're literally going to be called a liar. Like, why not just go lead with the truth? I don't understand that.
And for me, sorry,
No,
Tim, but
that's
for me,
okay.
and this is kind of a question for you that you can come back on. I another thing, if you look back on a lot of the wars and you hear our presidents, and we've had both sides deal with war, Democrat and Republican presidents in office, there's always been some type of just gentleman about those presidents in the past, the way of delegating the conversation. Um, and for me, what else has just really upset me about that is our soldiers have always been taught you guys have you walk with respect, you talk with respect. So when you have a president currently that speaks in those ways that we're going to bomb you to hell and we're going to annihilate you, and those words have never been familiar to me on either any side. And then I just feel that it creates a lack of respect to the service members because you guys aren't trained that way to think that way. Going into it, you're trained to follow the law, and that's it. You made a commitment, and whether you agree with it personally or not, you're going to do your job. And but for me, I just feel that again, the tone of the conversation, we're better than that as a country, I feel. And I just want to ask you, as that being a soldier, do you feel that inspires you as being working for the leader of our free world, or do you think that most of the active members, in military, deep down feel that there's a better approach that we should be approaching for that?
I can tell you that, like, with the things that President Trump has said, I don't like it. I think, and I supported him. I voted for him. I think he's a brilliant guy, but I also think he can be very egotistical. He can be, act like he's a 15-year-old boy. I think that some of the comments that were made were, beneath the commander in chief. Certainly, if as a senior NCO you would make those comments in public, you probably would be disciplined. Now,
And he's a role model to you. I mean, he's supposed to be a role model to you guys, right?
sure, he's your
Yeah,
commander in chief. He's the
absolutely.
highest
Absolutely.
level.
Yeah.
You know, but he's a human too. And I thought, they just did that rescue. They were trying to get the second pilot, and I know he's very involved in that, and maybe he was tired or something. I don't know, but it's not his first time. So saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
So but what do we do when we make a mistake or we say something? We apologize. We
Yeah.
just say, hey, I was tired. I made
And
a
I think
mistake.
that's where it's at. It's just
Yeah.
the accountability
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
it. And again, people that are more in the middle, I think
Yeah.
that's more what they want to see. We just the human
Yeah.
and the leader.
But
Sure,
playing
we've seen that
again,
with everyone.
the devil's advocate, I also agree. I voted for Trump, and I've met him several times. Like that.
Mhm.
I am pro Trump. I do wish he would apologize when he says stupid stuff like that. It is not the
Yeah.
first time. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. But in terms of the war, I mean, he's taken on something that a lot of presidents, both Republican and Democrat, have kicked down the road.
Yeah, I
And-
think in
and-
fact everyone except for was it all with J. Edgar Hoover. I know recently I read an article that there was attempts they were in the process of actually going, and then last minute he even pulled out. But I think that was the closest in history, other than Trump,
Right.
to actually
Do something.
do something to that point, because they all felt that it was just in the long term it was going to do nothing but
Well, no, they're
create more
thinking of
chaos.
themselves.
Well,
Right. They've
I
got
just-
4 years to prove themselves, and they don't want to take on a task like that because is it going
Yeah.
to leave them in a bad light for any chance of
I feel
re-election
too it's
or for
time
their
and-
predecessor.
absolutely. I
person to come
think
after
too
them.
time and place for war.
Yeah.
Sure.
And for me, again, I'm a big person of, and again, I don't want to go into Trump and just the administration in general,
Sure.
but for me, it was everything that he ran on was everything actually totally against war, of going to war, the American people first. I think this war is the worst that I've ever seen the economy as an adult or as a business owner since this war started. And I think right now, just for me personally, the war beyond service members, I feel going in that shouldn't be going in right now, and boots on the ground, if that becomes a big thing, I'm completely against all of that. But more so, right now, we need to heal our own country. Wait, you know what I mean? And how can we, it's like a human that takes on 10 tasks, but they're only one person, right?
Right.
How can he give us everything we need and win this war without something breaking down? You know what I mean? And that's where my biggest fear in that is because
Sure.
how long do people like me and my husband who can't get insurance because we can't afford to pay all of our bills and provide our business and keep that going? You know what I mean? While everything else is climbing up
Right.
on an income that has not changed for me and my husband,
Right.
but everything else is. And then family members around it, not just me, but many people that, like Tiffany said, I'm a rooter for the middle class.
Mhm.
Okay. But I just, again, for me, that's the biggest reason why I'm against the war, because if you want to be loved and trusted and have truth, then what you ran on, I just feel, is what you should prioritize your time on.
Yeah.
And right now your people are dying, struggling, starving, going hungry. And it's not all the fault of one man. It's a village and it's an administration and it's other people that are supposed to be there to hold somebody accountable when maybe they stepped off that path. Right.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that either, sometimes you think that you're doing it right, because there's nobody to stand up. Like me and Jen are, how you are sitting here. This is how, we get that level ground.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
do you feel that do you guys feel that the war is creating some of that chaos in your opinion?
I do. It is definitely affecting the economy. Of course it is. My biggest problem is what we referred to before, is that I don't think the American public is being told the reality and length of time and how it's going to affect them.
Which is important.
And so that's making things
Yes.
worse.
Yes.
If you had something that was more realistic to look forward to or to expect, that would make things easier. I definitely think.
Yeah.
And I think the media has had a lot to do with people's feelings on this. It all started like with Israel and Gaza. You keep hearing the word genocide over and over and over again, but the reality is that when you're warning people before you're going to blow up a building, that's not genocide. That's taking out a target. I mean, when you look at history going back to World War II, what we did to Europe, the Americans, what we did to Europe, was much worse scale, but it was a righteous war. We were attacked, and so I think there's a lot of that too. Like you need to learn what the truth is. Let's find the truth, no matter where it takes us.
Yes.
Right, and always be open to that.
And even if you don't like it,
you don't like it, right?
The truth puts you on that proper path,
right?
And that's why, I just, again, communication, and that has been a problem, not just in this administration. We've seen it in others. I just feel that could change it, whether you agree with the human running the country or not. Transparency still lets me know that, okay.
Yeah.
Whether I voted for you or not, you're still my leader and you're still a person that at least I know what you're doing.
Right.
And that's what I want to see. That's because when you wake up every day with an unknown, that in itself causes mental health.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know where to go or what journey to take and what does the future look like for any of us, right?
Right.
And so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say what you said is not knowing that is causing so much stress with people today.
Absolutely.
Because we're saturated with it 24/7.
Yeah. And talking about this, again, we're in another war. I think this is a good opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about your charity. This is another group of individuals that are going to come back, that are going to be affected by what they've been through.
Right.
You deal with individuals at work every day that are also going through these types of traumas. Tell us about your charity, the name, what you're doing.
So Gunny's Ridge is called Gunny's Ridge, Veteran and First Responder Mission. And what we do is we want people to come in. It's a community where you can come in and share and be vulnerable and with each other. And, and then you can learn how to use be given tools. I can tell you that I went through a period of my life where I had horrible PTSD, and I just felt like that I was damaged and I was never going to be the same again. And that's not true. There are things that you can do to heal yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and there's ways out there that you can be helped. And then, like what we do is we do things where you're working with your hands, working with plants, learning how to grow things, working with wood. You're taking something that might be ugly and you're making it into something beautiful, and there's a healing process that comes with that. And then while you're doing it, you're talking to each other. And we've had, people come out, we've done things, we've laughed, we've cried, we've been vulnerable. You have these rugged men and women too that have gone through this horrible trauma, and they're sitting there, they feel comfortable enough to share with somebody because they know,
and they've experienced it,
right,
all of them differently, right.
So, and then once you get to that process where you feel like that you've been healed, then you're gonna step out into the community to help other people. Veterans and first responders were always looking for a mission. Like when you lose that mission when you retire or whatever, and then you feel like you have no purpose in life, coupled with the PTSD, that's why you're desperate, despair. That's why people kill themselves.
Yeah.
So
you're giving them a new mission.
Fixing them, and then giving them a new mission. And that's what we're going to do.
Have you guys thought about extending any services to like wives or family members or anything like that? Because I think that's a big part of it too, that their support network understands.
Yeah.
And an understanding for the person in service, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and I've seen numerous friends and loved ones and their marriages and their families because of something that somebody selflessly gave and then lost everything because of it.
Yeah. And, the transition, like the spouses are home, taking care of everything, the kids, everything to do with the house. And then the person comes back that was deployed and there's issues. Because now I've been running this for a year, and you come back and you're going to tell me what to do.
Yeah,
there's a lot of issues that go with that.
And sometimes they come back different than when they left
Most definitely.
Right? So
Most
you've got
definitely.
that to deal with on top of it.
Most definitely. War, things that you see in war. Especially when it comes to children, like you touched on that, and there's a lot of innocent people that get killed. It just never leaves you. It never leaves your mind. Once those things get inside your head, they're always going to be there, but you just have to learn how to deal with them.
Absolutely.
And so Gunny's Ridge, you were telling me before we were filming, is just outside of Burgettstown, right?
Yes. It's about 6 miles away from the Star Lake. We have 101 acres.
Wow.
We have a good deal of money that we've gotten through grants from the
to start, but it's not enough
to start, but it's
that's amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna put a large barn up and then a small building to do the other things in, and it's gonna be like a big, basically Boy Scout camp for veterans and first responders.
I
absolutely love that.
Yeah, and then we want to use it to bring people like other organizations together, and kind of like mass your power, right? So.
And people heal so many different ways. So I think bringing in different and other nonprofits. I was just saying I would like to sit down with you sometime because I think maybe we could do something in regards to that too. Because really, PTSD and trauma is very similar across the board. As in law enforcement, you've seen it all the time. We talked about that earlier. So, and we know that animals really heal.
Yes.
Everybody, and veterans especially. Yes. You talk about a mission.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, that's to see something unconditionally love you every day.
Right.
And all you have to do is provide care to them. I mean, it's really inspiring.
Yeah.
And you see so many incredible just stories with it too.
And so you have an annual shoot for Gunny's Ridge, right?
We do.
Are there any other kind of events that you guys put on or thinking about putting on, or is that your main one?
That's our main one for right now.
What's the date for this year?
That will be over Labor Day weekend. It will be Friday of Labor Day weekend.
Okay, I will definitely be there.
Yeah,
maybe I'll make you come with me.
I would love to come. Yes, absolutely. Yes, totally.
Super fun. And that's a really great facility that you guys have chosen to have that out. So I will definitely be there.
Coleridge.
Yes, absolutely. In Weirton. And we want to include details about Gunny's Ridge at the end of this episode, both how individuals could potentially get in touch that want to help the organization,
absolutely,
as well as individuals that feel that they may benefit from getting in touch with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Absolutely.
We need to know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah.
So, and Black Diamond and Sunbelt and Groff Tractor, just know I'm going to be hitting you up real soon to help
Okay.
these guys. Okay. Right.
Okay.
So I'll be
Thank
in
you.
touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, do you have any kind of final thoughts or anything you want to share with us?
Yes, I do. I want to thank you for inviting me. And I think this is the kind of stuff that's going to heal our country, bring us back together again. It's okay to have completely opposite views on something, but it's sitting down and discussing these things with compassion and with understanding. And sometimes you just might learn something, right?
Yeah.
We can.
Yes.
And because there's too much polarization, I think we have a lot more middle ground than people think we do.
Absolutely.
An amazing
I
amount of
agree.
middle ground.
Yeah.
And every episode we do, we're finding more and more of it. It's really, it's phenomenal.
It's a very good thing.
Well, we want to thank you for
Yeah.
joining us for
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, it's been a blast, and I've
Yeah.
learned a lot too. And I hope that I would love to have him back again, actually, to talk a little bit more about the future of your charity and the nonprofit that you're doing.
Absolutely.
I think it's incredible, and I think a lot of people sometimes it takes time to get it out there, so it's important
Sure,
to
absolutely.
repetitively
I'll make
talk
Bunsell
about
come
it.
out and film some of the
Okay.
shoot.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
yes, that would be fun.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
100%.
And again, I personally want to thank you so much for your service, and not just in military, but as a human, as a representative of, you know what I mean, where you live, your world travels, and to bring all that back, it's so important. And I don't believe that the services that you've done, people can ever show enough love and
I agree.
support. It's probably the most selfless thing you can do is to leave and fight for people that you do not know. And so forever, I'll honor you for that and appreciate you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that story that, and you took it a very negative thing and you made it a positive thing.
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
always say that, to survive isn't enough. You have to thrive.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, I think that's what you're doing for all those veterans.
Right.
You're not just teaching them survival. Survival can still be deliberate. You know what I mean? It can
Oh,
still
yeah.
terrorize you. That's a daily
Absolutely.
thing. But to thrive
Yeah.
from
To survive,
surviving
Right.
is really the impact. So,
Yeah.
and you're doing that, and that's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
sir.
That's amazing. So thank you for
Send me a
that.
t-shirt.
Yeah.
I know, a t-shirt.
absolutely.
Yes, there you go. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
From me, you can I'll put my thumbprint
Yeah,
on
yeah.
there, but you can take all the rights on that. Yeah. You're here to survive.
Yeah.
You're here to thrive, not just survive.
Absolutely.
So,
That's awesome.
again, we want to thank Tim so much for
Yes.
joining us today. Jen, do you have anything
Just
at all?
tune in for the end of this episode and we'll put all the contact information for both Tim and Gunny's Ridge for anybody that wants to get in touch. And we just want to thank you and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us with all the episodes coming and all the great things. And again, welcome to Both Sides of the Fence. Bye, guys.
See you guys.